I was pitching hay into the flatbed when she rolled up sunglasses like a badge clipboard, like a sword. The kind of neighbor who speaks in verdicts. "I'm Brooke Ellison Willow Ridge Association president. This pasture is community open space." 3 sentences in, and she's claiming ground my family has sweated on since 1929, and I'm standing there with a rake my red heeler circling the cows. Thinking, here we go. I told her my name is Nate Harper. This ranch has Harper stamped on it back to the first-hand dug well. And if her map says otherwise, it's the map that's lost. Not me. She smiled that tight smile people wear when they think paper outranks dirt. Unrolled a glossy overlay and jabbed a nail at a colored block. Talked about jurisdiction and standards, then strode off like she'd won something. You know what I mean. Next morning, a violation notice was duct taped to my fence in Halloween. Red non-compliant structures cease and remove, like my granddad's hay barn would crumble because a laminator got involved. I slid the thing into my glove box and drove to the county building for the 2 tools that do not blink at bluster. Certified deed official zoning map. Boundaries in black seals that bite when you run a finger over them. Chain of title that reads straighter than most sermons. 2 days later, Brooke came back with backup 2 board members, trailing like kids who realize the ride is scarier than the sign, and she walked right in without asking, snapping photos of my fence, my cows, my tractor, reciting citations like a spell. Unless you grew a badge overnight, or a judge signed your field trip. You're trespassing, I said. And that's when the lawyer in a gray sedan slid in. Like Cologne, Philip Crane counsel for Willow Ridge, holding a cease and desist built on a perimeter adjustment vote. I flipped through it. Saw no county signatures, no public notice, no survey. Just bold fonts and wishful thinking. Told him to bring a warrant next time, and went back to fixing the hinge that squeaked more honestly than any of them spoke. Pride out here is not loud trucks or louder people. It's getting your boundaries right. So I called someone who knows boundaries. Ruth Delgado, a surveyor with more years on this soil than Willow Ridge has bylaws. Ruth set up her laser transit, walked the creek. Where my great-grandfather sank iron pins under cottonwoods, knelt, brushed away foxtail, smiled like she'd found a coin. Those pins still there, right where the creek bends. They'd have to move water to put you inside that HOA, she said. By Friday, I had notarized copies from 1929. Forward clean lines, clean conscience, and then Saturday morning I woke to orange flags staked across my north pasture and a big spray painted X on the side of my barn, like somebody thought paint could make truth. I didn't call the sheriff first. I drove to the registrar, met Deputy Calvin Pierce, slid him a copy of what Brooke had filed, a provisional annexation backdated to February, with talk of majority votes. Calvin clicked around, leaned back slow, and said the line that settled into my spine. That's not how this works. No public hearing, no county review, no supporting survey, just a PDF hoping to grow teeth, and falsifying records in this state is a felony, yeah? That happened. He drafted a formal rejection, signed an affidavit, forwarded it to the DA, told me to save everything. I saved it all. Then struck a match. We don't do fluorescent town halls where I live. We do firelight and faces. So I stacked cedar behind the barn, hung a sheet. Dragged out an old projector that hums like a patient tractor, invited every neighbor along Willow Ridge's edge. Folks showed up in boots and jackets, Vince, the retired firefighter, who still walks like a doorframe. Eileen from the feed store, with a ledger that never lies. Jermaine, the mailman, who knows the shape of everyone's name. I put the fake filing on the sheet, the flagged line, the red X. The map Ruth drew with pins and photos said, "If they can pretend my pasture is theirs, they can pretend your backyard is next." And murmurs turned to something that sounded like a room remembering its backbone. Vince said his daughter's fence line had shifted 5 feet after a review Eileen had been fined for a shed approved in the 80s, when permits were stamps, not PDFs. We wrote numbers on a yellow pad, called it a coalition, not fancy just daylight. Monday. That daylight showed up in uniform. Sheriff Dana Holt rolled into the HOA clubhouse with a warrant to seize annexation documents. Philip tried to argue with paper that had a judge's ink, and ink beats attitude. The county posted a statement by noon. No approval to annex beyond the original charter. Any enforcement like that is unlawful. Meetings got thin for Brooke that night. Power without people is a heavy chair. It looks solid. It tips quick. I thought maybe the storm had spent itself. Then a county utility truck ground up my drive. A guy with a clipboard asked if I was. Harper said he had a service order to shut off water for unpaid HOA maintenance dues, and I had to laugh to keep from cussing. I walked him behind the barn, lifted the cap on my wellhead stamped 1974, showed him the permit tag. Asked him where my municipal meter was supposed to be. He shook his head. Left me a copy. And at the utilities office, a supervisor named Lila took one look at the header and whistled old logo. Wrong form. Number no request in the system. A forgery with coffee stains notarized her statement and sent it to the DA. Told me I was the 3rd complaint tied to that association this month. Numbers like that don't grow in good soil. That afternoon, a Navy SUV idled by my gate, and Detective Keisha Monroe stepped out with a badge that didn't need a speech. Said Financial Crimes Task Force said they'd been tracking altered property records, illegal fines, dues redirected into shadow accounts, and my case was the first time they'd reached beyond their fence. "We'll need you to testify," she said, calm as a level, "and I may not be a speech person, but I'm not a run person either." Told her to say when and where. The preliminary hearing smelled like old wood and straight lines. Judge Albright read the fake shut-off order with Lila's notarized note, the county's rejection of annexation, Ruth's affidavit with photos of iron pins that have outlived 3 generations of fence staples, and her eyes said, what her mouth made official belief is not a defense to fraud. She froze the HOA's accounts. Suspended enforcement barred contact with homeowners without court approval. And for the first time in weeks, I felt light behind the ribs. Here's the twist that turned the whole thing from ugly to criminal. A week later, Keisha called me to the records annex and slid over 2 property transfer documents filed under my name. Different dates, different signatures, same parcel number, same hill. I ride most mornings. I've signed checks, receipts, a marriage license, a few apologies. I know my name. That swoop on Harper was not mine. Buyer was a shell called Iron Mesa Ventures, registered last year. Agent of record, Logan Ellison. Brooke's husband, yeah, that happened too. Quiet title claim was the play. Slip it through while the annexation was distracting the room. The DA added felony forgery, and attempted fraudulent conveyance warrants rolled like thunder, and when they served the Ellison house, neighbors said, the street looked like a parade you didn't want to be in. They found drafts of the fake forms notes on manipulating vote records, a spreadsheet of projected profits from reclaimed border lots with my parcel at the top, and in a locked basement cabinet were envelopes labeled with people I buy. Tomatoes from inside were copies of checks, private letters, a photo of a teenager spray painting a stop sign, a stack of tax docs with circles in red. Not just greed, but leverage the kind that keeps mouths shut. Brooke was arrested 2 counties over. Logan tried to check into a hotel under another name in Austin. Accounts tied to Iron Mesa were frozen. The remaining board members resigned like dominoes, and the state put the charter under supervision while a forensic audit kicked off. Paper nearly stole my land, and paper gave it back. The forged transfer was nullified. A handwriting expert with a magnifying glass and monk-level patience matched strokes and pressure. The clerk stamped so hard, her seal probably left a dent in the table. And Colton. The assistant DA looked me in the eye and said, "People like this count on fatigue. They bet you'll fold before they're caught." I drove home past fence posts that looked like chapters, and this time when I slept, I slept. Next morning, Vince showed up with a post hole digger and a thermos that could heat a barn. Eileen organized a repaint of the old feed store so it could be a neutral community hall. HOA crest on the wall, just coffee and chairs that don't wobble. Jermaine was tapped as interim liaison to the county, a man who carried everyone's mail, now carrying our voice, steady, respectful, stubborn. Where it matters. The land didn't change, but it felt sturdier, like roots found a deeper seam after the storm ripped the shallow ones. A reporter named Ray drove out in a silver sedan, asked why I fought, when most folks just pay and move, and I poured her sweet tea and told her the truth. Most folks don't have ashes in their soil. These posts that well, that barn beam with my father's initials. You fight harder when something stood before you and needs to be standing after. She asked what I'd tell anyone living under a board that treats a clipboard like a crown. And I said, know your rights, know your land, and never let a fake smile and a loud letterhead make you forget who it belongs to. I wish that was the neat last scene, camera back sunset credits. But a week later, I read a pre-trial statement from Brooke's new attorney saying she was protecting neighborhood values, that rural parcels threaten safety, that leaders must be bold to preserve standards. And some folks nodded right along. At the next planning session, a group from Willow Ridge pitched a new special district. Not an HOA, they said. Just a stewardship council with mandatory dues to harmonize the borderlands. Different name, same hunger. Some of my own friends think a lighter version could keep everybody polite. Me, I stood in the back with my hat low and felt the ground steady under my boots, because we've got proof and law and a hall full of people who know the taste of overreach. Now we'll show up again, rid the fine print again, count the votes in daylight, the way we stacked wood and told the truth, if this hit a nerve. Talk to me in the comments. Tell me where you stand. Guardrails, or just power with prettier stationery. What did we get right here? What did we get wrong? What would you have done? And if you've lived your own version of this fight, lay it out below, so more daylight gets in. Like the video, if you believe neighbors beat noise, share it with the person who needs it, and tell me where you're watching from. I read every one.